Welcome to Dayton Warcry Club. I'm Warren, and today I'm joined by my co-hosts Fred and Dave for part 2 of our massive list review. We couldn't get all of our analysis into one episode, so we've broken things into a second episode covering all the lists from the events leading up to Adepticon. Let's pick up where we left off with our lessons learned. We talked about dwarves. Let's go back to talking about underworlds.
Hey, let's do it.
So prior to Adepticon, we had a couple tournaments that were like the Adepticon warm-up tournaments. One of them was Dan, who ran a Gnarlwood expedition in Minneapolis, St. Paul, and he took down his tournament with Calthea Zandire. So he ran Calthea, obviously fully legal now at 210 points, an Old Guard ally, 2 Annihilators with Grand Hammers, and 3 Annihilators with Shield. So he called it Calthea's Thick Boy Cardio, or Calthea's teaching the Annihilators leg day. I've been calling these lists allies and annihilators, but the point of it is that you have these really super efficient 3-move guys, and you're using tricks to kind of get them into place. And once they're in combat, then you don't really care so much about the 3 movement. So using the best models you can, and then trying to get around their mobility disadvantage. So Calthea having coordinated strike, the Old Guard Tempest Eye, still very useful to slingshot them into position.
Warren, let me ask you a question. What core philosophy is this list built around?
We're gonna use them. We can do another magic frickin'.
No, we are not.
Here. Okay, good.
But to go back to the conversation we were just having, it's about getting activations out of your dice, right?
Yep. Oh yeah. You spend right. You're getting free activations out of coordinated strike. You're getting free activations by essentially getting free moves, bonus movement out of the Old Guard. Yes.
That's the takeaway. If you're looking to watch this video to learn how to build competitive lists, look for the common threads between the list, and that is a big one. A really big one. Find that value worth, the activation's worth of value, and this list is just packed with it, right?
Yeah. So a few other things. So Calthea is great.
Nutty model.
She's
really
so hot right now. There's folks on Discord, and they're kind of shoehorning Calthea into everything though, like bringing her in other Stormcast chamber lists where you need to have your own hero to lead, plus then Calthea. I mean, it's certainly good, but you really kind of have to have like the numbers to kind of make Calthea worth it. So I don't think she's not like a universal ally that goes into every list, but like when built around her, obviously, yes, very powerful.
So coordinated strike gives you the best value when you are activating
3
Annihilators.
Yeah. Yes. And ideally 3 models.
Yes. So it does have some list building restrictions to get. Now, is it always like pretty good? Yeah, but this list is exploiting it. This list is getting maximum value out of that ability, and that's what makes it so effective.
Yeah. And then one other thing that I noticed about the Annihilators. So I didn't play against this list exactly, but I did play against Justin during the narrative tournament, and he had brought allies and Annihilators for the narrative tournament. So I was going up against meteoric hammers and grand hammers, and I got to see how they felt face to face. Now, a few things I thought going in. So I used to think, so we got the profiles down there right now. With the hammer and shield at 130 points, they have toughness 7. 3/5, 3/5 damage profile, toughness 7, 20 wounds. And I used to think, why would you ever want the meteoric hammer ones? The extra point of toughness is wasted because like next to nothing has 6 strength in the game.
With one important exception.
Well, chimeras. Yeah, chimeras and annihilators with grand hammers. But it's the toughness 7 is going to be very, very rarely useful. And I was very leery of having a 1-inch range model with 3 movement. So I was like, why would you ever want to take them? Well, what I realized is that they're 15 points cheaper, and that matters. If you're only taking the grain hammer ones, it becomes very hard to get 7 models. And
Yes,
remember, for this tournament, or for Rumble Pack missions, your 7 models is probably your floor, your absolute floor. And I think Salty was recommending like 8 or even 9 on Rumble Pack missions. So the 130 points, that 15-point savings, that's a big deal there.
Big deal. It is.
I would love to have more grand hammers with the 2-inch range at 145 points. Then also, if you look at the grain hammers, the strength 6 is good, and you might get some value out of strength 6. But again, going from strength 5 to strength 6, also you had some diminishing returns there too. Not as much as going from toughness 6 to toughness 7.
No,
but it matters.
Sometimes you're going to be like, man, I'm glad I have this high strength. I'm trying to squash dwarves or whatever. But You're right. Absolutely. And shaving those points to fit more models in, it's still a very effective model.
Yep. So anyone who's watching us or listening to us has probably seen Salty's tournament report from a couple weeks ago. So this is our take on this list. Again, strong list, points all line up very well. So this is the second place list from Minneapolis from Emily Ott. And this is a really strange hybrid of Dark Oath Savagers, including the Godsworn Hunt. You have a Slaughterborn with the axe as a leader. He's a big threat, big damage dealer. You have a Fury in there as a thrall. 4 Glory Seekers, 3 with a shield and 1 with a spear. And then you have 4 out of the 6 for Godsworn Hunt. You have the leader, Thedra. You have Alo, you have Grawl, and Jagathra. 1,000 points total, 9 models. What do you guys think about this one?
It's definitely an interesting list. The one thing that I know for sure, because I have these models, is that it is very light on wounds and toughness, but has a lot of interesting tricks it can do.
Yeah, it's what interests me about this is that Dark Oath Savagers are not considered to be. I would say the community consensus is they're not considered to be a highly competitive warband. So to see them do well is really cool. The models taken from Godsworn Hunt all kind of do some interesting things. Thedra was pretty much lauded or derided as completely unplayable in 1.0, but she has a toughness reducing ability, debuff, that if you're expecting a lot of toughness 5 dwarves or toughness 6 stormcast, can let these kind of light to middleweight models kill them much more consistently.
Yeah, I know Dan had mentioned in his report he was really scared of that ability. It's like an enfeeble or something like that.
Yeah, it reduces the toughness, I believe, by the value of a dice roll, which is like potentially a lot, something like that. And then, of course, Grawl. These are all, some of these models bring really unique things, right? Thedra has that debuff. Grawl is really fast, glass cannony little piece. Jagathra is quick, has range, and can throw her spear for a range attack. So, yeah, like Dave was saying, this is no true like archetypal hammer, but a lot of little tricksy, quick models.
Yeah, like 9 models total, which is probably one of the biggest strengths. I was looking at it first and I was like, I don't know how Emily was winning with this. And she played Dan the first round, I think, and took him to a draw.
The Slaughterborn, if you all remember, I actually tried a little bit as an ally, and it also has some really strong abilities. I believe it can like permanently increase its number of attacks with one of its abilities.
Yes, it can. Whenever it gets a kill, it can increase a stat by 1 for the rest of the battle. Yeah.
Which, you know, it's not unreasonable for it to start having 5 to 6 attacks. So
Yeah, that was kind of the mechanic of Godsworn Hunt, right? Is like you build out the future. You can like build up more wild dice or build up your
Darko,
stats.
yeah,
Of course,
you do predictions and that sort of thing for free wild
Yep.
dice.
Yep. So cool list. That one I
Okay.
would've-
Okay, well, we talked a lot about dwarves last week, and we got a lot more dwarves to talk about this week. So here we got Fire Slayers at 3-1. Eric Christensen.
Okay. What's the
So
number
he's-
one that jumps out about this list? 11 models.
Yeah. He does that. So by bringing the Doom, he's got a Doom Seeker for the leader. So that's only 135 points. He's got the Annihilator Prime Old Guard combo since he had 2 ally slots available. So he's got that for a total of 290 as a fast moving hammer there. He's filling up points with a 95 point Hearthguard Berserker with a little bit of range. And he's got 7 Chaff Berserkers, 3 of them with double axe and 4 of them with the war pick and shield. The double axe ones are 70 points, and then the pick and shield ones are 65 points. Both of them have 12 wounds, but you're looking at toughness 4, toughness 5 for those low point costs. So very hard to kill chaff there.
Yeah, the Volkite Berserker with shield is toughness 5, 12 wounds, 2-4-1-4 attack profile. Not going to do a ton of damage, but point for point, it's going to be able to camp objectives really, really well. And the pair of axe guys is that sheer volume of fire, right? It's like the spiders or skank spam or some of those lists that have a bunch of low damage models. Like 4 attacks is a lot. A couple of guys add up, and you're going to roll crits. So
strength 4 as well, so it's not unreasonable. You're always gonna be hitting on at least 4s, maybe hitting on 3s in some cases.
Yeah, you're going to outduel a lot of other chaff with that attack profile, right? Like you have that high strength and decent toughness and good amount of wounds. Like these guys are actually going to outfight a lot of the other chaff models, which chaff that can fight chaff is kind of at a premium, right? Like generally speaking, chaff isn't good at clearing other chaff. So
yeah, they're kind of unassuming at first. I'm not gonna lie, but you start digging into their toughness and their wounds and the point cost, and you really start to see, okay, yep, this is another predominantly move 3 swarm war band, and you can see why it did well.
Someone is going to do really well with Nurgle Mortals at some point, and they're going to prove to us that move 3 is just busted across the board. Right now, like the only move 3 faction that we haven't seen good results from is Nurgle Mortals. Like it's just a good way to play in 2.0.
I think it's on the cusp. Atan's friend Charles he's been playing it nonstop, and I think there's something there, but I think it's just kind of on the cusp.
Yeah,
of
it
greatness.
would shock me at this point. It absolutely would not shock me to find out that there's a good list in there.
It's like, whatever you just have to figure out whatever the right ally is to unlock it. Right, the Vanguard is something, but it needs just something else, I think, to put it over the top, maybe.
Yeah, the answer is always the Ogroid Myrmidon.
Chromoid Crusher probably fits in there okay. I don't know about the points. Anyway, I don't want to get off topic, but yeah, move 3 models tend to be pretty good, and these are pretty good ones. Even for that, I really like the shield guys quite a bit, and the axe guys are no slouches either. Doomseeker is like fine, right? 5-4-2-4 attack profile.
Yeah, 20 wounds, 135.
Yeah, it's for its point cost. That's pretty good.
Yeah, I'm starting to respect shields a little bit more. Like you don't, as long as you're not asking them to deal any damage. If you just ask them to sit on an objective and not die, that's perfectly fine.
And is a reasonable thing to do right now. Is to sit somewhere and not die is totally a valid role for a unit to have.
So switching gears here, So in Ashburn, Virginia, the Tabletop and Beyond crew ran a tournament as well. So now we're back to Caradron Overlords. Another 11 model list here from Sam Cribbs. He's got a Mizzen Master and a company captain for his sources of fight for profit. He's got 2 big guns, Thunderers, and he chose a Fumigator and an Ether Cannon. And he's got a mix of Arcanauts. He's got 4 with pistol and 3 with a Sky Pike.
Good stuff. It meets. We talked in the other episode about sort of what the basic framework we thought for KO, and that was like a flying guy, at least 2 sources of fight for profit, 2 big guns, and a lot of Arcanauts. And we said, there's probably a lot of different configurations that you can do in that general framework. And this is a great example. Like, this is very fundamentally very different from what we were talking about before with like double Aether Cannon or Aether Cannon mortar. Like the Fumigator is, we were just talking about this, I think last week. It's a pretty good attack profile on that Fumigator.
Yeah, like by itself.
Yeah, like it doesn't need it doesn't scale as well with fight for profit, but it doesn't need it either. You could put it in one of the other deployment groups that doesn't have your fight for profit leader in it, and it's going to do just fine, like at fighting chaff models, low toughness models.
That's the 6 attack one, right? The sun sort of looks like the volley gun, right? And we were talking about the mortar being the 3/5 one, the other hard hitter that doesn't need fight for profit, really.
Right, exactly. You get base 3 attacks with the mortar, and it has long range too. And the Fumigator's shorter range, but it's sort of like in with your pistol guys anyway, so you can keep them grouped up and still get its value. So, and obviously the big takeaway here is a lot of pikes. We talked about how pikes are probably a valid way to play this list.
Yep. Reasonable melee profile there.
Yeah, very good melee profile. It's basically a Graveguard for 75 points. And Graveguards are really good. And these guys are really good. The problem is they don't synergize as well with your fight for profit. In other words, like if your fight for profit is up front with your pikes to pump your pikes up, then your pistol guys can't shoot into that combat, right? But if you stand back and shoot with fight for profit, your pikes can't attack because then you can't shoot anymore. So there's a little tension there, like to either go like full melee or full shooting to get maximum value out of your activation, so you don't have a competing strategy. But pikes are really good. You can send them off on another corner of the board to do their own thing and shoot at the other corner of the board, and it's probably going to be fine.
Yeah. So I use this format for the lists, and I don't capture the dagger shield hammer decisions, but oftentimes I do have access to those. But yeah, I'll kind of leave that as an exercise to the viewer or the reader to kind of figure out how you might kind of place things.
And the other thing to take away from this, one, the company captain I think is really good at 90 points. It's just a source of fight for profit with a good shooting profile.
Yeah,
but
no, the Mizzen Master.
The Mizzen Master is the more melee focused leader over the Engine Master with balloon suit. The Engine Master is a better shooter. It's got like a 2.5. I don't remember, but it's a decent shooting profile. Right. Where the Mizzen Master has a pistol, but is primarily a melee fighter. So this list does have that melee capability for sure.
Yeah, a lot of folks online talking about Mizzen Master being like the standout all-star for KO. And like if you're looking to ally in something from KO, the Mizzen Master, with its fast movement, relatively cheap cost, it's a little glassy, but deals good melee damage and brings fight for profit. Like that package is a very good looking ally, people are realizing now.
Absolutely. It doesn't hurt that it's a really cool model too.
Yes, absolutely. I love the balloon dwarves. So yeah, again, I think this framework has a lot of ways to go, and this is a really good highlighted that you can play a split list, like take advantage of how good Arcanauts with pistols are and how good Arcanauts with sky pikes are. Like this, you can do both at the same time, and as long as you're careful with your deployment groups and how you have to kind of plan the battle out ahead. I would think know where your pikes are going to end up and know where your shooting guys are going to end up, so you don't waste activations trying to move across the board. But if you do all those things, I can see why this list was successful.
So moving forward, so second place, we had a Chimera list. So this is Chimera, but in a Beast of Chaos shell. So a total of 7 models. You had the Chimera, you had a Beast Lord, and then you had 5 chaff models: a Gore with shield, 2 Gores with Gore blades, 2 Ungores with a spear and shield. 1,000 points, and then 7 models total.
Just for variety's sake, it's nice to see a Chimera list in a different shell besides Nurgle. Although I do think that Nurgle is probably the superior shell.
Yeah, you're looking at this and like your Gores are fine. They're absolutely fine. There's nothing wrong with a Gore. The Beast Lord is basically a War Queen, right?
Pretty close, yeah. The 5/4/2/4.
A little quicker.
Little quicker, little glassier.
Yeah, but it's going to play a similar role. Not an alpha level threat, right? It's toughness 5, 22 wounds. Means it can't like hold a position on its own or duel with a really heavy hitter. But
toughness 4, actually.
Yeah. But it can definitely clear some chaff off an objective or duel another mid-range model very effectively. And of course, in this list, the Chimera is your plan A. Beast Lord is not what I would call like a fully fledged plan B, but Beast Lord and some Gores isn't the worst thing to have next to, available to you.
I think if you have a Chimera and 5 other models, that's probably going to be an okay list just about any amount of time.
Yeah. As long as you know how to play it and the terrain is too good to you, the Chimera is just so good that there's a pretty good chance in an average game it's going to run away with the game. But yeah, cool list. I love Beast of Chaos, and it's nice to see him do well.
Finally, third place is Peter Mercencavage again, and this is the same list that he played at Adepticon. So this truly was his warm-up tournament. Bounder Boss, Orc Mega Boss, Bolt Boy Boss, Snurk, Prague, 2 Nettas, and a Brewgit.
So we already kind of went into detail on this list in the previous episode, right?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
But just a reminder, the Bolt Boy Boss is cool in its ability. Like if you're worried about fight for profit, a Bolt Boy Boss can try to kill a company captain, for example, pretty effectively with its ability to crit on force. It doesn't take that many to take down something that size, a Buff Lord size. So cool list. Obviously, Peter knows how to play it and did well with it.
Yeah, we've talked about this, and I think we had kind of a difference of opinion on this in terms of like, is there value to playing the same thing and becoming a master of it, assuming you have like all these options? Because I think at this point, Peter has kind of become like the master of the Gits list. He's found something now that works for him under the new 2.0 rules with the allies.
Yeah.
There's certainly something to be said about getting as many reps in with the list as possible, I think.
Yeah, it's probably true. I think Warcry as a game rewards good general Warcry skills, maybe more than it rewards specific reps with a specific list. But it's certainly not bad to have. But I think that mastery over the basics of the game is probably more important. But if you find a list that does well for you and you know it well, that's certainly an edge.
Yeah, very true. Because I know we were talking last week about very specific deployment tactics and stuff like that. Knowing all those little tricks.
Oh yeah. Yeah, making sure that you know your deployment groups and why they're set up and that they're synergistic and et cetera, et cetera. That's certainly valuable. Absolutely.
So fourth place, we got some Slanesh here. Javier Martinez. So he's got a couple Slakehorns. He's got a Slangor Slakehorn, and he's also bringing in Slake Slash from the Dread Pageants. He's got an Ogroid Myrmidon to fill out his big guys. He's got a Raptorix as a Thrall, and he's got 4 Bliss Brew Homunculus for a total of 990 points and 7 models. I'm sorry, this should be 8 models.
Slake Slash obviously is the was one of the standouts of the Underworld warbands. Just a really effective kind of assassin model. Does good damage and is fast. Really effective at getting to a point on the board and unloading a lot of damage. And having the Ogroid Myrmidon, like, you have a lot of heavy hitters in this list. Like Slangor Slakehorns are very good also, obviously.
Yep. And their move 6 makes them ideal for that Slaves to Impulse. Again, any double that gives you free actions, people are really starting to kind of understand the power of that now. So you have, 6-inch moves to get into combat and then potentially double attacking with those profiles.
Yeah, it really go. I mean, obviously, like, if you could take 2 Slake Slashes, maybe you would, because of the point cost is so much lower, but you can't. And Slakehorns are still very good. Slave to Impulse is an insane ability for move 6 models. The Homunculuses, obviously, those were added.
They added them in 2.0. So essentially a Crypt Ghoul or Planesrunner profile, just super cheap, move 5, toughness 3, 8 wounds, 3/3/1/3. Don't expect much, but at 55 points, they're like ultra cheap.
Yeah, they give you that activation padding for your Slakehorns, your Slake Slash, and your Ogroid Myrmidon to pick their fights a little better by, making your opponent activate. I think you get 1 Homunculus per box of Blissbrew Archers. So either you have a big hammer army or you just really want those Homunculuses.
Probably kit bash them.
Yeah, probably can. Another thing that people overlook with the Myrmidon, and I've talked about the Myrmidon until I'm blue in the face, but it also has a poke for another free activation that I think people overlook quite a bit because it has so many things it does and so many abilities, but it does also have a take 1 damage to get a free attack of a friendly ally that it can do.
Like a Crack the Whip sort of deal.
Yes, it does. Yes, it's almost exactly like Crack the Whip, but it's it's a spear poke.
It's stacking those activations. Absolutely, get the value, get those bonus activation equity going.
So the last 2 tournaments we had those from Best Coast pairings, but we had a little bonus set of lists here from Steven Colzer from Kansas City. He sent us these lists. So they had an Adepticon warm-up tournament as well the week before. And here are those lists. So Steven won it with Ogre Maw Tribes. So you got a Butcher, you got an Iron Gut, you got a Yeti. You're allying in a Bolt Boy Boss, which is interesting. And you got 3 of the named Novelars from the different Bladeborn ward bands.
So, love Ogre Maw Tribes. They were the first warband that I ever put on the table for this game. And I was a big Ogre Kingdoms fan back in early days of Warhammer fantasy battles. But the big thing to take away from this, in my opinion, are a couple of things. One, like Warren mentioned, the Bolt Boy Boss as an ally. So the Bolt Boy Boss is a really good, we talked about it earlier, really good ranged assassin. It can whittle down a group of chaff from a distance, but I think it really excels when you're using it to kill enemy buff lords like your company captains or things of that nature, your Tempest Eye allies from range. And now that they nerfed the Thunder Fist, which was your Ogre Maw Tribe, like, you just machine gun down chaff. I think that the best option you have left over to you is the Bolt Boy boss to kind of fill that role in destruction.
You mentioned the cost there, right? Your ogres are not as big as they could be, and you're also kind of taking a Yeti as well, and you got 7 models. So you have 4 semi-large models, three Gnoblars. So yeah, that is kind of the cost of getting that capability in your list.
Right, because like the Lead Belcher was your leader, right? You got to take that in your leader slot. Here you're taking a Butcher and then bringing in the Bolt Boy boss. The Butcher is notable because it has 1 million wounds. I'm not looking at it right now. Does it have 40 wounds? 38 wounds? It's got a lot of wounds. More than a lot of the other Ogre Lords do, besides like the Tyrant. But has a decent attack profile too for 225 points. But what it really jumps off the page to me is that it's just so hard to kill for 225 points. Iron Gut, and of course the other big one from the things we've been seeing recently is no Brugit in this list.
Yeah,
maybe
didn't quite have the points.
You do. You could cut KG and add a Brugit. So that was a choice not to play it. To have another like, what's it called? Gnoblar instead. You could swap KG out for a Brugit, and it's probably not a bad move. But this list doesn't have isn't stacking the models to take advantage of it, right? The Iron Gut's good with it, but like no Gut Lord in the Butcher slot or anything like that. So the Brugit's not like at its peak here. But yeah, cool list. I like seeing people play around with that old template from 1.0 with the Lead Belcher spam and finding the other things that ogres are good at.
So this next one is one I'm really interested in. So second place, Jack Adkins with Horns of Heshet. Yeah. So got the leader, the Ruinator with the flail. You got a Fomeroid Crusher in there. You got 2 Flamethrower dudes. You got a Demolisher with a shield. And you got 4 Shatterers for a total of 9 models, 1,000 points.
Good list. Really like the list. Fomeroid Crusher is great.
Fomeroid Crusher fits. It manages it for it being 260. It fits the points exactly to kind of get exactly everything you need. Because we were playing around with theme lists for horns with a, using something that counts as a Shaggoth or something, or a Doom Bull, and unfortunately it messes up the points. But 260 works with these models.
Yeah, so the models that are fighting for that slot are the Fomeroid Crusher. The other big one is the Mind Stealer Syrinx, which is also 260, or a Dragon Ogre Shoggoth, which is also 260. Of the 3 of those models, I think the Fomeroid Crusher brings the most to this list, which is just high strength, high damage melee attack, which the list otherwise really does not have.
Right.
Your Flame Hurlers can do a lot of work from a distance. Your Shatterers are great. 10 wounds and 2-inch range for 55 points is insane.
Yeah, we were just talking about the homunculus or the Plays Runner sort of 55-point chaff profiles. Yeah, for these guys having 10 wounds, a little bit slower, but the extra couple inches of range, the extra inch of range. Yeah, really strong. People are talking about Shatterers being broken, and I didn't think they looked. I didn't think they were broken when they first came out. I was building Horns list with 0 Shatterers because I was like, "Oh, these are not good. These are not great. I want my dudes with the sweet helmets."
Yeah, and the ones that the really sexy model was the Flame Hurlers. I think were the ones that high strength, high crit damage, range attack profile. But
they still are. Think of a meta where we have all of these swarm warbands. The ceiling with a high triple, the ceiling on a flamethrower is like sky high.
Yes, and it's strength 5, so it's great at killing those dwarf high toughness models that we were talking about, where they can spam these strength 5, 12 wound models, like demolishers are good at killing those. And shatterers have the same threat range as those homunculus, with the extra -1 movement, +1 range, but like 2 more wounds and more crit damage. Like, what an insane model. It's crazy.
Well, you can also like walk them up within 1.5 inches, and then someone else has to walk up a 1/2 inch to hit them if they have a 1-inch range. That range is a nice little defensive addition as well, in addition to the 2 wounds.
And you mentioned the Demolisher with Flame Hurler triple, which has a great name, Engulfing Flames of Dark Artifice. Really good. It's similar to the Cygor's ability. Like, it's a lot closer range, obviously, but you want to be in that range to shoot them with your flamethrower anyway. And you roll a number of dice equal to the value of the ability, and for each 4+, you do 3 damage. And then for each enemy within 2 inches of that fighter, you get half of the value of the dice. That's a lot of damage. It's a lot of damage when you couple with, you've already shot twice with your flamethrower and then you pop that. You're going to be able to really put a lot of hurt on those 8, 10, 12 traff wound models, more than people are playing those 10 and 12 wound models because the 8 wound models were too easy to kill. But I think those flame hurlers do a pretty good job of putting 10 points out when they need to.
Yep. If you happen to get a trip 6, on average, it's going to deal. On average, they'll deal 9 to the main target and 4.5 to everything else around it. But the ceiling, right? You could roll hot. In Magical Christmas Land, you could nuke a whole group.
Yeah. Cool profile. Demolishers are like fine. They just fill the point set. That just fills the point on this list, and you have to take a Ruinator. So, really, really tight Horns of a Shut list. Really like it.
So we talked a little earlier about the Gut Lord. Well, here's the Gut Lord list with Iron Jaws. So super elite list. You got the Brute Boss with Boss Choppa in Iron Jaws. You got 2 Gut Lords, and you got 3 Ard Boys with Choppa and Shield. So super elite list at 6 models, 990 points. You're not really expecting the Ard Boys to do much. Just get on an objective and don't die. And you got 3 giant hammers that are doing your work for you.
And the Brute Boss also brings you messing if you need it.
That's true. He can help kind of get around your lack of numbers.
Yeah, if you need an objective, this turn to try to get those last couple of points, the Brute Boss can solo an objective with 3, 4, 5 chaff models on it by popping you messing and then living through the turn. So yeah, that's very useful. And of course, your Gut Lords are going to be able to one-shot a lot of models with that insane damage profile. They also have Might Makes Right. So if they kill something, they can get extra attack activation. So there's some ways in here to play bigger than 6 models, if that makes sense.
Oh, yeah. Well, you mentioned the abilities on the Brute Boss. The Brutes also all get Duff Up the Big Thing as well.
Yes, good point.
Just from a psychological standpoint, staring down 2 Gut Lords is terrifying if you're playing this.
Yeah.
I'm speaking from experience. Yes, I agree.
Just an insane amount of damage. 2-inch range. They also have on the Maw Path, which gives them +3 to movement activations for a double, which means that the big heavy hitters from ogres play much faster on the board than they look, in the sense that this has a 2-inch range and can on demand move 7. That's like a blood scale. What is the Blood Rack Medusa? That's basically a Blood Rack Medusa. But it does 3, 6, 5, 10. Like, that's not bad.
Yeah, you have a few different movement options too, right? You can charge with a brute boss too. Your first turn, if you're not fighting, you might probably aggressively just building doubles and just charging your guys into combat.
Yeah, this list is going to want to use its dice correctly. I mean, only 6 models, and the Ard boys are like, Ard boys, not super heavy hitters or anything, but surprising amount of depth to this list with when you use your abilities and how.
All right, so we got Kansas City there. We got Kansas City down. Last up, so I think this was back a little bit earlier. I think February timeframe. We had NORCRY. So Krister is the TO for that, I believe. So this is in Norway. And we never got the official list, but I did ask them on Discord, and we can kind of talk about them. We can reverse engineer at least 2 of the lists here. But this brings up back to the dwarves theme that we have going on the last couple of weeks here. Talking about like what dwarves are the best and the best use for them and how you go about building lists. So he says the first place list was a Warden King, a Teleport Tree, that's our Tree Revenant Scion, an Annihilator Prime, and fill it out with hammers. Again, we don't have the exact list here. We'll leave that as an exercise for the viewer. But so yeah, you're probably putting the Annihilator Prime and the Warden King together to move him around the board. And you don't have a lot of other damage other than Annihilator Prime. So there, your pick for the dwarf is going to be those 80-point hammers. It's sort of similar profile, actually almost the exact same profile as the KO Arcanauts with the Sky Pikes, I believe. Maybe a little different. Not quite, but.
Yeah, you said to try to get damage. If you look at these guys for 80 points, you can take several of them. They can put out a good amount of damage. So they shore up, like you said. There's no real safe deployment group to pick a fight with in this list. Like, you want to stay away from the Annihilator Prime, but like you also can't get swarmed by hammerers. So It's really hard to like pick a fight against this list. And hammers, of course, have 12 wounds. They have high crit damage. You could really get yourself in a lot of trouble if you let yourself get in range of too many of those. But if you dance around them too much, then your opponent's going to get the opportunity to steal objectives with your teleporting guy, or pop your Warden King triple to get that Annie Prime across the board out of nowhere and really do some damage. So it's really, I imagine, a very tough list to play against.
Yeah, I'm doing the math in my head. I think it's something on the order of like 7 hammers for a total of 10 models, give or take. So yeah, a very reasonable number of hammers.
I'm also a big fan of the spiciness of the teleport tree allied in, because if you've never played an objective or treasure based mission against one, they're very frustrating. And I really like the idea of sending in your hammers and your annihilator, these sort of big, slow moving, clog them up, but then just teleporting the tree all around the board and collecting things.
Yeah, I think the tree's still good. You're seeing a little bit less of the tree now, just because folks are like focusing more on the Tempest Eye ally and just trying to keep their model counts up. But it is still a very useful trick. I agree. We'll skip down to the third place list. So you had 2 different types of dwarves. One's a damage dealing dwarf at 80 points. The other one is a super tanky, cheap dwarf at 60 points, the Ironbreaker. So he's got toughness 5, 12 wounds, and just the average chaff profile, 3313. And so the list here is a Rune Lord, Medusa, Bloodrack Medusa, that is, a Killian King, and you get 5 Ironbreakers. So this list, you're really just, your Ironbreakers are just there to just be activations and not die, and you have 2 very mobile hammers that are doing your work in this list. So if you get that Cities of Sigmar AOS box that has all the dwarves in it, you can build all of these. And so these would be probably where you would start building hammers and Ironbreakers. Going with the extreme. combat ones and the extreme tanky ones.
So to jump in, it's the box you want for that is the Regiments of Renown.
Okay, yeah.
The new Regiment of Renown box comes with a Lord and a bunch of dwarves that you can build into basically any dispossessed, like Cities of Sigmar dwarf. So yeah, it's got a million different build options in the box. I picked one up. It's a great box because otherwise these dwarves can be kind of hard to find. So great box full of really competitive models. And like you said, not only do you have the Rune Lord to move your Ironbreakers around, but Bloodrack Medusa moves 7, has a 2-inch range, and the Achillean King moves 10, flies, and has the Relentless Killer's ability from Varangard, Storm of Blows, so can move and then functionally double attack. So a lot of mobility in this list. And then, like, if you're trying to counter that, then the Ironbreakers are just like setting up on the objectives, and it's going to be really hard to shift them in time if you get behind on that. You got to start killing them like turn 1 if you're going to clear enough of them off the board with those high wounds and high toughness.
Yeah. And then the final list here is the second place list, and we don't have any more information here, but he says it's Star Soul Mace spam plus 2 Tempest Eye allies. So again, the Paladins with the Star Soul Mace, even scarier than Annihilators, with a 4/8 damage profile, 2 Tempest Eye allies. I was trying to brainstorm to see exactly, what you can get out of 2 allies and how many Star Soul Maces and who you have as a leader. I couldn't quite figure it out. Leave it as an exercise for the viewers in the comments, maybe.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's not going to be a ton. No matter how you squeeze those numbers, Paladins with Star Soul Maces are expensive. But my goodness gracious, they do so much damage. I mean, like, it's like playing a bunch of like rat ogres or a bunch of like tyrants. Like, these are some really scary melee units, and you just take a bunch of them. Like, you just pack the list full of them and just kill everything.
Yep. So again, all 3 of these. Go ahead.
I was going to say, vulnerable to things like Thedra Skullscryer. If you expect this list in your meta, like those Paladins, if you debuff one and kill it, that's a fair amount of your opponent's warband you just took out. And, there's definitely ways to exploit low number, high toughness armies. But if you're not ready for it, it's going to do a lot of damage.
Yeah, the one thing I learned is that regardless of your toughness, crits don't care. You get crit down, you just spike down just through unlucky die rolls sometimes. But that comes with the territory.
I said it just happens to the best of us.
Yeah. Worth noting, all 3 of these lists built around Movement 3 models.
Yep. In different ways, right? Like, obviously, there's a big difference between Ironbreakers and Paladins, but yeah, you are min-maxing by getting these models that are priced so cheaply because their movement is low that all their points are going into survivability or combat stats. And just once they get where they're going, the fact that your opponent paid more for movement puts them at a disadvantage. Like, once you're fighting and not moving, your guys are going to be point for point better fighters than theirs, and really leveraging that.
Yep. You know what else just came to mind as well? So in all these lists we looked at last week and this week, you know what we haven't seen?
What's that?
Chaos?
Soulblight Gravelords.
It's true.
The boogeyman, right? Everyone's afraid. Oh yeah, Graveguard spam. People are finding other ways to break the game other than spamming Graveguard. It looks like.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I wonder if it's underrepresented or just underperforming. I haven't taken there's so many lists, or if people are experimenting and we haven't decided on the best list yet. It's a very deep faction, but you're right.
We don't have any lists from Warhammer World. If I dug into those, I sort of let Off Meta Musings do more of that coverage. But if we dug into those, we're going to see a handful of skeleton spam lists and that sort of thing.
The thing that's got me really excited about those lists is the ability to bring in the Ashburn exemplar and just have a good, quick, really hard-hitting hammer to back up. Because I think like one of the weak points of Soulblight Gravelords is its leaders. Not that they're bad, but you don't have like a real heavy hitter option to go get. And a Skirgan Exemplar as an ally is a pretty good option there. So obviously I still think the faction is really good, but maybe it just gets out competed by things like Ironbreakers. Who knows? Or Arknaut pistol spam. Like I wouldn't want to be an army of movement 3 low wound models up against a million pistol shots.
Well, I know at Adepticon, I don't think, if you look at the overall representation, I'm not sure we had a lot of Soulblight Gravelords players playing at Adepticon. I'd have to dig into that.
Yeah, I'd be interested in seeing that, but it's possible that the way the meta is developed is just somewhat hostile to it.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody. Well, let me rephrase. I certainly didn't look at 2.0 and say, "Oh my goodness, dwarves are going to dominate the meta." Like that was not on my radar. I was thinking Graveguard and things of that nature, but like dwarves are pretty good. So maybe that we underestimated them.
Well, all right then. So finally, we have our usual show closing, the upcoming events. So this one, well, by the time you're watching this, this next one is past, because tomorrow we're going to be at Epic Loot from noon till 6. We're going to go do Rumble Pack missions. So that'll be in the past by the time everybody's watching this or listening to this. But then the next one we have for sure on the books after that is going to be, we're going to be back at Mavericks on Saturday, May 6th. We'll be there from 12 to 5. My brother's in town for that. So we'll definitely be playing there in the afternoon.
If you're in the area, there will be. Don't have to worry about showing up, and there won't be games. Like there'll be games, boards, models, terrain. Like it's not going to be a waste of a trip if you want to play Warcry.
Yeah, as a group, we really try to pride ourselves on the ease of which we can integrate new people in. We always have multiple boards. We always try to have 2 to 3 war bands with us. Things we can loan out. We're happy to loan out. We're happy to teach. Most of us, I won't speak for everybody, but I think for the most part, we're very welcoming to new people. We'd love to see anybody come out. We'll do our best to get you set up.
And then the other thing we'll be doing is I'll set up another date at Epic Loot, probably sometime in May as well. So again, going back to our usual tempo of at least once a month at Epic Loot, and then hopefully get up to once a month at Mavericks as well.
That's the dream.
This brings us to a close for this episode of Dayton Warcry Club. I can't say exactly when we'll be back, but as long as there are events locally and across the world, we'll keep covering it. Until next time, I'm War Machine.
I'm C Forever.
And we also just lost Fred Shred. But thanks for listening.